I hate those white soldiers who took us from our homes. I hate the soldiers who make us keep walking through the snow and ice toward this new home that none of us ever wanted. Samuel Cloud was a 9-year-old boy who walked on the Trail of Tears, a significant milestone in the history of the United States of America. It changed the lives of many people, like him. Although relations with Native Americans were relatively peaceful, the War of 1812 began to change. Relations with indigenous peoples became strained, leading to the Indian Removal Act of 1830. The act caused a long-lasting turning point which allowed the United States to acquire new territory through force, strongly impacting Native Americans of the past and present. The baseline idea of Native American control was proposed by George Washington in 1789, who believed that if natives adopted a Euro-American lifestyle, future wars could be avoided. Because of this, Washington made several efforts to purchase Native American land through fair treaty but failed. The plan of Native American removal later resurfaced after the War of 1812, a conflict between the British and the Americans. After the war, natives were severely weakened. President Andrew Jackson, elected on March 4, 1829, was angry that natives had sided with the British during the war, and seized the chance to force Native Americans off of their ancestral lands so settlers could utilize the land instead. Jackson ratified the Indian Removal Act in 1830, which began the deadly Trail of Tears. The Indian Removal Act affected many events between the 1830s and 1850s because it made it lawful for the President of the United States of America to claim any lands west of the Mississippi River belonging to Native Americans through agreed-upon treaties. However, Americans did not actually abide by this law. One example is the Georgia Gold Lottery. In 1828, gold was discovered in Georgia's northern mountains, which were the territory of a Native American tribe, the Cherokee. To hoard the gold, the Georgia state government banned the Cherokee from being allowed to mine for gold on their own land, and arrested them if they did. Tension increased with the Georgia Gold Lottery of 1832, which gave 40-acre squares of Cherokee land to white settlers whose names were drawn in a lottery, which was made possible by the Indian Removal Act. The Cherokee took the issue to the Supreme Court in the Cherokee Nation v. Georgia case in 1831, and the Worcester v. Georgia case in 1832, where the Cherokee argued that it was unconstitutional for Georgia to extend its laws into Cherokee lands. Even so, the ruling that stated the U.S. laws had no authority over Cherokee territory was ignored. The natives were later forcibly removed from their homes. Many other events occurred because of the Indian Removal Act. It largely affected the Cherokee, Seminole, Creek, Choctaw, and Chickasaw tribes. Most of the time, leaders of these tribes were coerced, threatened, or bribed into signing treaties that would allow Americans access to the land. Many believed that if they did not give in, worse things would happen. Some were scared into assimilation, like the U.S. wanted them to. These treaties include the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek in 1830, which began the Choctaw removal.
Last treaty negotiation at Dancing Rabbit Creek was practically at gunpoint. The Choctaws had been allies of the United States through a series of wars over the previous decades. Choctaw people had bled and died to protect the United States. In return, the United States demanded our land.
Two more Choctaw removals occurred in 1832 and 1833. Next came the Treaty of Quezada in March 1832, giving all Creek lands to the U.S., and the Treaty of Payne's Landing in 1832, which gave all Seminole lands to the U.S. Some Native Americans refused to leave their homes. The Indian Removal Act's injustice eventually led to the outbreak of the Second Creek War and the Second Seminole War. They fought against the unfair rules imposed on them, but were still forced to leave their land in the end. Very few Native Americans remained on their ancestral territory. Those who were captured were dragged away in chains. In 1834, the Treaty of Washington was signed, requiring the Chickasaw tribe to relocate to the new territory. Finally, the most well-known treaty during the Trail of Tears was the Treaty of New Echota in 1835, which goes back to the Cherokee removal. A small band of self-elected officials, including Major Ridge, John Ridge, and Elias Boudinot, signed the treaty without the consent of the people, forcing the Cherokee removal. John Ross, chief of the Cherokee Nation, was opposed to the treaty and created a petition that was signed by over 15,000 of the Cherokee to revoke the Treaty of New Echota, and sent it in a letter to Congress to protest. Nevertheless, Ross's actions were dismissed, and the Cherokee still had to leave. When the Cherokee continued to resist, around 7,000 soldiers were sent in 1838 to forcibly remove and escort them to the new land, led by General Winfield Scott. A total of around 100,000 Native Americans were relocated during the Trail of Tears, and around 15,000 died on it. Mainly, people died on the Trail of Tears because of things such as starvation, malnutrition, exposure to extreme climates, disease, and abuse from the soldiers. However, the Trail of Tears was beneficial to American settlers. The land that was wanted from Native Americans was mainly in the present-day southeastern United States, including the states of Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Illinois, Kentucky, Missouri, North Carolina, Florida, and Tennessee. The Native Americans were relocated to the present-day U.S. state of Oklahoma. The tribes were forced off of their land to the new designated territory for an amount of money they never actually received. Jackson's racism toward natives influenced westward expansion for the U.S., as he gained a lot of territory from 1830 to 1850 during the Trail of Tears. Jackson, along with other American settlers, believed he was perfectly justified in taking the Native Americans' land. Jackson himself said in his message to Congress in 1830 that the policy of the general government toward the red man is not only liberal, but generous. He is unwilling to submit to the laws of the states and mingle with their population. To save him from this alternative, or perhaps utter annihilation, the general government kindly offers him a new home, and proposes to pay the whole expense of his removal and settlement. He believed, like other Americans of the time, that the United States was superior to the Native Americans and never viewed them as equal human beings. The annexation of Native American territory never really ended, and later, in 1907, even the newly given territory was made into the U.S. state of Oklahoma. In reverse, the Trail of Tears took a great toll on the people who walked on it. Many more people died once they had reached the new land, because the environment was so different from what they were used to. However, the Native Americans began rebuilding themselves. By 1859, the differences between the Cherokee who had moved voluntarily and those who had resisted had been settled, and 32 schools had been built, along with a newspaper called the Cherokee Advocate. Native Americans continue passing down their culture and history to their descendants, mainly through oral traditions. The natives remade themselves after harsh and trying times, and today some of the largest Native American nations are in Oklahoma, the land they were relocated to. In summary, the Trail of Tears was an extremely shameful period in American history and a major turning point for both natives and settlers. It negatively affected Native Americans, as they were uprooted from their cherished homes. In contrast, American settlers were positively impacted, as they gained a huge portion of land that greatly contributed to things such as agriculture and settlement. Today, the Trail of Tears is recognized as an atrocious act committed by the United States of America, and in 2009, President Barack Obama signed the Native American Apology Resolution.
That's why I want you to know that I'm absolutely committed to moving forward with you and forging a new and better future together. It's a commitment that's deeper than our unique nation-to-nation relationship. It's a commitment to getting this relationship right so that you can be full partners in the American economy and so your children, your grandchildren can have an equal shot at pursuing the American dream.
President Obama signed the resolution with the hope that it would help smooth over any leftover hard feelings from the Trail of Tears and bring together both Native Americans and Americans alike. Many memorials have been made in honor of those who walked on the deadly march. The Native American nation has come a long way from their days of discrimination, and now they and their culture stand strong forever.